Hi, I'm Anthony Newbold. Welcome to A Closer Look. This week we continue our conversation with the Minister of Immigration and Financial Services. This week it's about the WTO. Minister, welcome to the show.
It's good to be back again.
And thank you for coming back. And I know I said we're going to talk about the WTO, and we will, since everybody else is talking about it and need to know some more. But I have one more question for you about immigration. Residents who are children of non-nationals after July 10th, 1973. They are allowed, qualified to register as citizens of the Bahamas. They automatically citizens once they register?
No, once they're the qualifications between the years of 18 and 19 years of age. They're entitled to register. The government still has a discretion as to whether or not to grant citizenship.
So the operative word is they are entitled to register, but that does not guarantee citizenship.
Correct.
One more thing about immigration before we leave it. We give, the government gives permits for people to cut the grass. Don't we have a lot of Bahamian lawn care companies that?
Yes, we have a lot of lawn care companies, we have a lot of air conditioning companies, we have a number of those type of companies. You need to look at who the employees are. So whilst the company might be Bahamian owned, the large percentage of certainly of landscape companies, the employees are not nationals of the Bahamas.
So while we're prepared to own the companies, we're not prepared to work in them?
Some cases, yes.
In some cases. WTO, as we said at the top, is your responsibility for relations dealing with the WTO. I think we need to start at the beginning. What is the WTO?
The WTO, the World Trade Organization, is a rules-based organization which deals with the controlling of way countries, member countries, deal with trade in their between their respective countries. It's the shortest version.
That's the short version. And so what it is essentially another trade agreement.
Yes.
And I say another because we're part of other trade agreements.
We're part of the Economic Partnership Agreement we signed in 2008, coincidentally when Shivago Lang was the Minister of State and responsible for that area. So we're part of a European CARIFORUM arrangement that's been going for 10 years now, dealing with things like fisheries and a number of issues where we have trade with Europe and in some cases different trade barriers, different duty rates between Bahamas and, let's say, Germany than we do between Bahamas and the United States because of that arrangement.
Why would any country, why would this country, why would this government want to be a part of the WTO? The benefits of being
as with the European Partnership Agreement, it gives you access into markets, access, for instance, a local company in Grand Bahama tried to go to Mexico. Mexico put up the duty rates because they thought that an American company could do it better. That would not be allowed in the WTO. So once you negotiate your entrance package, that is the set rates between each country and there shouldn't be any variance.
WTO looking to, in a way, balance the playing field, level the playing field?
Not necessarily level the playing field. You negotiate your accession basket in the case of the services or the goods basket, and that's the relationship you have between every country. It's not like just the United States. So every country will have access, let's say for chicken, at that rate, and you will have access at the same rate.
How long has this question been on the table for?
10 years. We started in 2008. It went for a hiatus, restarted 2017, and now we're looking towards 2019, 2020, 2021 for a full accession.
So my question then is, obviously a lot of concern, and there's always fear when there is there's not enough knowledge. Why haven't governments been more proactive in educating people about this whole idea of the WTO?
2008, we had the financial crisis, which created other avenues or other concerns, different political. It seemed like the former administration, that wasn't one of their priorities, whereas under the Minnis administration, he stated many times, we want to open up the economy, we want to liberalize the economy, we want to make the economy grow. And we cannot make the Chamber of Commerce report will evidence is this: we cannot continue to make the economy of this country grow on a what do they used to call it, the Stafford Sands model of 60 years ago. It isn't working.
But this economy is not already open?
It is open in certain areas, financial services. I mean, I heard the people in Rawson Square the other day say Bahamians should own the hotels. Well, you know, I think with due respect, we have to be real in this. We tried, when I was chairman of the hotel, to sell one of the local hotels to a trade union. And they said, no way.
Yeah.
So, you know.
And they work in it. Talking about that study that was commissioned by the Chamber, recently released, what, in your mind, should Bahamians take away from that study?
I think they should look at the two scenarios in it. There's obviously going to be the naysayers. You saw that in this morning's paper, where some person said we can run a parallel track to WTO. But there's two different scenarios that run through that report. One is a WTO accession where we do the bare essentials, and the other is where we take a wider look at the Bahamas. We do with a wider modernization of the country, the way we do business, which will result, according to the study, and in my belief, a greater impact and greater growth for the Bahamas.
Talk about how we do business. That's also a concern because, again, governments are not known to be very efficient. And people think that because of that inefficiency, we would be overrun by the conditions imposed by a membership in the WTO.
We don't have to accept the accession to the WTO. If we find we cannot negotiate a package that is beneficial for the Bahamas and the Bahamian people, then that's a course of action we don't have to go down. I think you'll find that certainly the lead negotiator, myself, believe we are capable of standing up to the countries around the world and making our mark in where we want to be.
I say that the Bahamas is soaking wet. We got about 400,000 people that we can count. What gives us the power to negotiate with a U.S., with a Great Britain?
In the World Trade Organization, it's country to country. Similar to the UN, it's country to country. Now, some people will say, no, the United States is a big power. But we also have the right to say no. So that's part of the negotiation. And we're still in that negotiation period.
Yeah, I want to ask you one more thing about that, but we got to take a break, and we'll be back with more with the Minister of Immigration and Financial Services, the Honorable Brent Symonette, after this. Welcome back to A Closer Look. Anthony Newbold speaking with Minister Brent Symonette, talking about negotiating and any power the country may have, and what's to stop any of these big countries from exacting their pound of flesh, because you didn't give them what they wanted.
The end result is always you don't join.
Yeah.
Now let's just use something that is topical. The WTO negotiation does not mean Walmart is going to walk in tomorrow. That's a myth. It's not going to happen because we are reserving wholesale and retail for Bahamas. Now, you know what? City Market was here. International company. Super Value ran them out. Supermarket, you know? Super Value started by a man who was a packing boy in City Meat. So Bahamians should not be scared that they can't run their own business and start their own business. Access to capital might be another issue.
Yeah, that is
another conversation.
That's another conversation because that's how they get started. And you were talking about, you know, you're carving out these areas. What exactly are those things that are negotiated that we're saying this is for Bahamians, this is going to be for us?
Right. We have a number of, I think there are 19 of them in total. So there's a lot of agricultural issues, chicken, sweet peppers, et cetera, et cetera. So you put the agricultural side and the retail side, on the supply services side, there's wholesale retail, there's the whole question of services in terms of lawyers, real estate agents, and so on and so forth, construction, that are protected to a certain degree under the offer.
And there's no free movement of people.
Absolutely. I've heard this issue. For instance, the F&M government have a track record. When we joined the Economic Partnership Agreement in 2008, former Minister Mitchell was talking about CSME, Common Market Economy. The Bahamas said no, there's no free movement of labor. There will be no free movement of labor under the WTO. Absolutely not.
Education, and we touched on this a little earlier. I know you had some town meetings. I presume there's going to be a lot more of those kinds of things so that people they have the facts.
The initial town meetings were, what is WTO?
Yeah.
Now we're getting more into the weeds. We had our recent meeting with Geneva. We've got a series of questions from the United States, Brazil, the European Union, Canada. For instance, we have a ban on Canadian beef.
Okay.
You can import American beef, we can't import Canadian beef. So that's an issue that the Ministry of Agriculture will have to work out. So these are things as we get in the weeds that we have to work out, and that will require a second round of education, updating, because nothing's cut in stone yet.
Yeah. Lead negotiator, your former colleague, Zhivago Lang. What does he need to do? What does the government need to provide for him to ensure that these negotiations are successful for us?
We need, I think, and you can see them in the Chamber of Commerce report, we need to go through a number of those issues of how far is the government of the Bahamas, how far are the people of the Bahamas wanting to go in opening up our economy. And those are some issues with regard to competition law, investment in the Bahamas, persons coming to work here, persons coming to open business. So for instance, we had the Commercial Enterprise Bill, which we passed in Parliament some time ago, which identified industries that we do not have here. Okay. Recently in Parliament, we did the BH1 visa, which allows basically techie people to come here, set up a tech industry, which we hope will bring Bahamians into that area, will cause employment for persons renting properties, buying cars, and then would grow the industry into a national industry.
And one of those visas was, and we getting into immigration again, was about this 14-day window for people to come in. The only people who would be monitoring that would be
immigration.
The immigration officers at the airport.
Yeah. Well, let's take, for instance, at the moment, the Office of the Prime Minister is negotiating the heads of agreement with in Grand Bahama with one of the big projects down there. Every time someone came in to get some information, they require a short-term visa. They say, why do I need to invest in the Bahamas? I'm coming over to do, and that's the type of person we're looking at. This doesn't cover taking jobs away from Bahamians, absolutely not. Yeah. And the same is parallel with WTO. We're making sure that the areas we protect are the areas where Bahamians are invested in. So for instance, if you take, let's take real estate. So real estate companies have Sotheby's, Christie's, Remax. They're all Bahamian owned, but they franchise that name from, in retail, Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's. They're Bahamian owned, but it's a franchise agreement. So we shouldn't be scared about opening that type of arrangement up, whereby the Bahamians own whatever the facet is and possibly pay a franchise fee. That's another avenue that we intend to protect under the negotiations with WTO.
So you're talking about retail and KFC and Burger King and the rest of them, that's retail, but they're owned by Bahamians.
They're all owned by Bahamians. And then look at the other one. We've used duty systems, for instance. The government recently reduced duty on clothes. And they said to the retailers, the Bahamian retailers, if you don't bring the price down, we'll lift that duty requirement. So I'm told places like some of the clothes stores, you're getting those clothes at Miami prices.
Yeah.
You might not have the selection, that's a discussion for another day, but the prices are there. And that's always a concern when we go through tax reductions, that the stores reduce the prices of the goods that duty is reduced on.
Because there's also nobody monitoring that either. Well, is there a most important thing that Bahamians need to know about what membership in the WTO will mean for the Bahamas?
I think they need to grasp this opportunity because it will result in modernization of the Bahamas, not to be scared of it, and to realize we are poised to grow the economy, which will affect every Bahamian.
Yeah. Is there a country that you can point to for Bahamians and say, listen, look at these people, they joined the WTO?
The study looked at the Seychelles. There were anecdotal answers to that. We're the last country in the region to join. Obviously, that has difficulties because the bar has been lifted higher. I think you'll find the Oxford Economic Study shows that with certain systemic changes in the way we do government, we can change the outlook of future generations of Bahamians.
What happens if we do not join the WTO?
It's business as usual. But if you disagree or agree with WTO, if we join or if we don't join, one of the things I would implore Bahamians to accept is we have to change the 60-year-old model of the way we do government at the moment if we are going to grow the economy at all. It cannot be tourism and financial services forever.
WTO, this push to join the WTO, is in some way, not totally, because it's been on the table for a while, a trust to bring the Bahamas into the 21st century, if you will, in the way we operate and relate to other countries?
WTO will require us to do that. No, we are not using WTO to force us to do that. They're running parallel. And I think this morning's paper made that issue. It is possible to continue that parallel track without joining WTO, but the modernization has to happen. And you've seen that happening under the Minnis administration. You've seen changes in exchange control. Bahamians can have accounts in the United States. There's a number of issues. The duty rates have come down in a number of issues. We brought duty on toilet paper down from 45 to 25%. There's been a movement of fair movement of labor. You can invest overseas. Central bank is now opening up real estate transactions. So there's been a shift of opening the economy, which is having its effect on why we now have the growth we do.
We got to take this break, and we'll be back with more talking the WTO with Minister of Immigration and Financial Services, the Honorable Brent Symonette. Welcome back to A Closer Look. Anthony Newbold speaking with Minister Brent Symonette. End of year, still a reasonable time frame to put on whether or not we will join the WTO?
We're working towards it. We just got the list of questions from the United States, the EU. We'll go through those and we'll take a look at it. I mean, one of the issues is chicken. I don't know if
Chicken.
Chicken is a big issue, whole chicken. There is no way in the foreseeable future that the Bahamas can supply Bahamians with the needs they require for chicken. So the concession or the discussion will be giving import of chicken at a certain rate up to a certain ton, and after that the rate changes or the tariff changes, which means Bahamian chicken producers are protected. And that's the way this issue works. Now, whole part of WTO, it's trade, the trade part, not the services part. We don't trade that much.
Right.
It's amazing that we can bring water from Fiji and land in the Bahamas, freight and duty, and we have Aquapure here. So there's some of these industries who have been receiving concessions for 20 years. At some point, they need to graduate out of that concession business. So if I was to tell you that concessions currently cost about 140 odd million. That's what we give away to Bahamian companies to allow them or permit them to trade.
They're going to say you should give us more than that because
they are because electricity is high, so we need to deal with that. The ease of doing business, whatever. But let me use the example of there's a guy who imports building materials, and he gave me a quote the other day along with a fella who didn't. And the quotes are pretty close. Mm-hmm. This one didn't get concessions, this one did. Does that mean he's making extra profit? So there's that issue too. So at the end of the day, We have to balance the good of the Bahamian people with the manufacturing section, with the services section, and everything else like that. And it's the good of the Bahamian people that's of concern. And people are hurting. If we can lower the prices of grapes, I mean, the government has done a whole bread basket item. Yes, we put quinoa in the bread basket, and people are saying, why that? Well, that's an attempt to get at a better, healthy budget. These are ongoing things that if you follow what the Minnis administration are doing, we are trying to nudge, pull, push, move the economy into an ease of doing business and produce better results for the Bahamian people.
In a way, this concern, I don't want to use fear about WTO, might force some people into doing the kind of improvements they need to do to be better business people.
No question, no question. There's the old saying, if you knock your head against the wall and expect a different result or whatever it is, you're not going to get a different result. Yes, they need some help. So as I mentioned, electricity, some form of protectionism. But the world is moving away from that. And I was in Europe recently. High streets, in England, high streets are dying because of Amazon. People are picking up the phone, and we have to move along with that trend.
Yeah.
You can get something from Amazon or whatever in your house tomorrow at a less price.
As we've heard from somebody recently, financial services, which we haven't spoken about at all, also part of your portfolio. What is your responsibility with respect to financial services?
Let me just finish off WTO in case we run out of time. So financial services is an area. So WTO, financial services is very open. Credit Suisse, any of the Swiss banks, you look at the trading companies. We're going under the Commercial Enterprise Bill into headquartering. We moved recently a big company from Barbados, 29 work permits. They're renting spaces, houses, children going to school, input in the economy. They have secretaries, and gradually they will move into a greater hiring of Bahamians. That's the way we intend to grow the country. So that's financial services. We're out there making sure that the WTO is covered in that area, which is fairly, as I said, it's fairly open. Hotel industry is fairly open. So in that area, financial services works along with trade very hand in hand to make sure the services section of the WTO application is compliant with our accession.
How challenging has it been, is it, to promote financial services given the ever-changing landscape that we face?
Have you ever tried to play football and score a goal when the goalposts are moving? Fortunately, with the Bahamas has been in the last 2 years, we've actually passed a lot of the regulatory requirements that the OECD, the EU have required. The Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Attorney General, myself, along with the Prime Minister's office and Prime Minister have worked towards putting the regulations in place. We just passed some laws the other day. Now it's a time to do the beneficial ownership register and some of those technical issues, and then we go out on a marketing campaign.
And we got laws, there's no question about it. We have a lot of laws.
We've covered the laws. We need to do some enforcement issues, and then we'll go out on promotion.
You still see financial services as being the second pillar of this economy for the foreseeable future?
And a lot of people misunderstand financial services. It's a high-paying job. There are a number of Bahamians I know of a bank and a trust company. Bahamians head both sides of the bank and the trust company. It's wonderful opportunities. We're allowing people to move around the world. If you look at the accounting firms, people move all over the world. Bahamians move all over the world. Same with a number of the banks. You meet them all over the world, and consequently eventually come home as well.
Yeah. Financial services, we just think banks. Credit unions and the rest of them considered as part of that?
Not part of the promotion necessarily that I'm doing at financial services. We're focusing really on banks, trust companies, head offices, headquartering, that type of issue. But in terms of regulation and control, those all begin to be part. Even real estate agents become part of the Know Your Customer, Financial Action Task Force control issues.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm sure I will find something else to talk to you about, and I'm going to ask you to come back. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching A Closer Look. Make sure to find us on Facebook at A Closer Look can also go to YouTube and access these programs as well. Thank you again for watching.
Yeah.